Hi, and welcome to a special edition of the Zogby Report, Real and Unscripted. I'm John. I'm here with my son, Jeremy, and we're going to do a special edition on a Tuesday because it is the day before Wednesday evening debate of the other Republican presidential candidates. We're going to take an early look and some early handicapping of the others in the race. Look forward to it. We will be back on Thursday then taking a look at what happened or didn't happen at the debate. Jer, how you doing today?
I'm doing well, and I think this is going to be a good discussion.
Yeah, I do too. I have a lot to say, and so you're probably going to have to jump in and stop me. We're not going to focus too much on Donald Trump, even though he will be the headline after the debate. He'd be the headline anyway because he has a dominating lead in national Republican polling as well as in the key early states in every state, frankly, for the nomination. And he is holding an event, an interview pre-recorded, I understand, with Tucker Carlson, and that in itself will garner a big audience and a lot of attention. What won't garner a big audience, maybe even not a lot of attention, is the other candidates, the other 8 who are in the field who qualified for this debate on Fox. And if you're ready, I'd like to just start talking about each of them, what they need to do, and what I think might happen.
Yeah, let's do a lightning round.
Okay, so good. Let's start. The obvious one is the guy who's running in second place, Ron DeSantis, governor of Florida. You know, was an early favorite. Some early polls had him almost tied with Donald Trump, but then he faded. Some polls down to single digits. And now he's back up in a solid second place, depending on which poll and how you look at it. But what Ron DeSantis has to do is pretty much what we know because one of his campaign strategists leaked a memo to him as to what he has to do. And that is that he will continue to ignore Donald Trump, side with Donald Trump legally, but he will go after Vivek Ramaswamy, the billionaire who we're going to talk about, and he will try to be likable. That's a very interesting thing to pull off. I remember in 1988, Governor Dukakis tried to be likable, but didn't try hard enough, and it was a turning point in the campaign. What do I expect Ron DeSantis to do? I think probably just simply hold his own. There are folks who will be gunning after him. Ramaswamy will, because they're both going after the woke vote. Chris Christie will, because that's Chris Christie's former life as a prosecutor and also the lane that Chris Christie is driving down towards the nomination, which is to be the non-MAGA, the anti-Trumper, and for that matter, anti-Florida governor in this race. Do you want to comment on each, or shall I do a bunch and then have it?
Well, yeah, let's go back and forth. Otherwise, it'll be a lot to remember. I mean, DeSantis can be summed up at least, maybe there's a new DeSantis in the making, right? The leak suggests that. DeSantis probably knows that his game is suffering, and how long does he have? So anyway, what sums up, I think, DeSantis's campaign and hopefully is a new direction is a story I heard from a member in an audience who was at a church in Manchester and said DeSantis came in and there was somebody in the legislator who stood up and asked a question during Q&A and said, "I'm here to determine why I should vote for you instead of Donald Trump. Why should you have my vote?" And DeSantis looked to the opposite side of the room and said, "Next question." So, I mean, I think that's quintessential Ron DeSantis, right? And that's the perception that he's giving a lot of people. So how does he turn it around? Can he get Sununu in his corner to endorse him We know Christie is positioning himself for that. Haley is probably positioning herself for that. That's what they need to do in Iowa. That's what they need to do in all the early primary states. So I think, as you kind of indicated, DeSantis is going to have to make a clean break with his arrogant, the perception of his arrogance. I think he has a lot to boast about as a governor, although contentious. He successfully won in a landslide, and he is liked in Florida, I think, by and large. Chris Christie, Chris. All I want to say about Christie is what's interesting about him is that he's kind of Ron DeSantis-esque, meaning that he's been a governor of a blue state, right, for a while, and he's been a prosecutor, and he's certainly been politically incorrect, like the other guy, Donald Trump, and I guess what's going to be interesting is how he can position himself on the debate stage, because it does look like if there's going to be one person who's piled on or who's going to be targeted, it's probably going to be DeSantis.
Absolutely. All right, let's move on to Tim Scott, senator from South Carolina, man of color, and the only African American in the race. What is his lane is strong support among evangelicals, South Carolina. But what we're seeing is he's in double digits in Iowa, and if not, then he's at 9. But he's in third place behind Trump and DeSantis. The significance of his showing in Iowa so far is that it's, you expect about a quarter to a third of those who show up to Republican caucuses in Iowa to be Christian evangelicals. And he's vying for that position to be their leading candidate, of course, against Donald Trump, but also against neighbor to the east, Mike Pence. And right now it seems to be working for Tim Scott. I think what's also unique about him and what gives him an advantage is that he's really the only smiley face. He's the least angry of the candidates. He's the one who tells a very positive story about the American dream, and that can be compelling in a period where farmers in particular, but middle-class Iowans are kind of seeing that middle-class dream, that American dream, falling by the wayside. So I checked the fact that Scott is in third place in Iowa and third place as well in New Hampshire. This is a very sequential process. The winner of Iowa doesn't necessarily become the winner of the nomination, but a winner or someone who does better than expectations, and in this case, in the top 3 in a crowded field, sets the table for New Hampshire. And if he's already polling in third place in New Hampshire, then a solid set of numbers in Iowa can springboard him into New Hampshire, and then he goes home right after that to South Carolina.
Yeah.
Your turn.
Well, no, that's very interesting, because he has this conundrum of he's very optimistic, he's very likable, he brings a message of hope, he's a walking embodiment of the American dream, but he's too fundamentally conservative, and that may work in Iowa, but Iowa is Trump territory. That's the heart of the Trump heartland, at least to this moment. And then the other challenge is New Hampshire. To my understanding, New Hampshire may be one of the most secular states in the union. You have a just a really secular mindset and a tradition of it in New Hampshire. So how does Tim Scott grow? But to your point, he can perform well enough to to show that he did better than expectations and carry that into his home state. I'll tell you one other thing, and I'll turn the mic back to you. Is to me, the two to watch right now are Tim Scott and Vivek Ramaswamy, and I think they both have half of the ideal candidate. Tim Scott more hopeful, more smiley. Vivek Ramaswamy also a living proof of the success that the American dream can bring, and also optimistic and young, but a warrior too. And somewhere between those two personalities, I think is the ideal future Republican candidate. So whether those two could kind of mix and match from each other, but that's the dynamic that I'm looking for is those two. They represent a real break with what the Republican Party could become, and I think much different from what we've known it over the last 10 to 20 years.
Yeah, and I should note, and not to dwell on wokeism, but of the 8 we're going to be debating, 3 are people of color. 1 is a woman of color. That is so non-Republican that it's really rather amazing in and of itself. So let's talk about Ramaswamy. Interesting fellow, 37, 38 years of age, multi-billionaire, very exciting story, as you point out. Newcomer to politics, but he's been rising in the polls, and rising also in terms of getting his persona out there on podcasts, getting a lot of coverage. What I see in Vivek are any one of 2 things. Okay, one is a potential vice presidential nominee, in contrast to Donald Trump. The other that I see is, you can run for office and hurt yourself, or you can run for office and help yourself and have a springboard to a future career, either in politics or as a national or global icon of some sort. In either case, that would be enormous for Vivek Ramaswamy and for this entire process. It would legitimate this process for him and for the Republicans. And so, I'm looking to a situation where he probably helps himself. He has interestingly come out against, not so much against aid to Israel, but weaning Israel away from U.S. aid. And what he's saying is to extend the Abraham Accords, and that Israel could be a partner with the Emirates and with Bahrain and with Saudi Arabia in a coalition against Iran. But he's catching some flack, not only from Jewish leaders, but very importantly on the Republican side from evangelical leaders.
Yeah.
Any comments on Ramaswamy, or if you have?
Yeah, I was on YouTube the other night, like I am a lot of nights, and other video share platforms, and his Tucker interview popped up, and what was fascinating was I watched about 25, 30 minutes of it, and he is a tour de force of ideas. And what really surprised me was how international of a mindset that he has. He can talk about, like you were just talking about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. He can talk about Ukraine. He can talk about Taiwan and China. And so, I mean, this is a young guy who has a real grip on foreign affairs. Interestingly enough, also has a lot to say about the economy and social issues. So, that coming from a 38-year-old is pretty impressive in the presidential scene. So, there's no way to predict. I feel like there's no way to predict how successful he'll be. I do think he'll have success. I do think a lot of Republicans will be impressed with him. Certainly, we'll see that here's somebody with some serious knowledge of most of the issues, if not all of them.
I'm going to jump to Chris Christie now. You've made some comments about him. Um, you know, Chris Christie's time came and went in 2012. That's when he was at his hottest. Like Barack Obama in 2007, 2008. Should he wait? No, but I'm hot now. Let me go now. That was Christie's moment. And of course, he chose not to challenge the front runner, Mitt Romney. There's a lot of baggage there with Chris Christie. Certainly, the George Washington Bridge, um, doing, if not actually authorizing, certainly enabling, you know, a, a, a traffic disaster and watching some of his aides actually go to prison. Uh, and so there is that baggage. On the other hand, he's been a successful prosecutor. He has had an exciting persona. He may have lost a lot of that rugged and independent persona when he went to serve and actually be a spokesperson for Donald Trump. Some Republicans are never going to forget, in the wake of Hurricane Sandy, him walking the beach almost arm in arm with a Democratic president, Barack Obama. On the other hand, he is popular in New Hampshire. He's doing well. I don't think he can do well unless he has a show of some sort in Iowa. I don't think he can skip Iowa or bypass ending up in the top three in Iowa and reappear in New Hampshire. And if, as you pointed out, if he gets an endorsement and actual help from Governor Sununu, that can be enormous. The Sununu family, a lot of elected officials, John Sr., John Jr., and now Chris, very popular family, very influential Republican circles. Any more comments on Christie?
Yeah, well, that governor endorsement in New Hampshire is either going to go to Christie or it's going to go to DeSantis. I'm pretty certain of that, and so that will really tell us a lot. That will give us some better idea of what will happen to the pack. I mean, as far as Christie, I'm in agreement with you that I don't know that he can bring back the second coming of Christie. I know he's certainly going on the road and doing that, almost apostle like as the anti-Trumper. I don't know that voters are going to buy it.
Good point. I don't either.
Yeah.
Speaking of not buying, Nikki Haley, to me, very smart lady, very capable, very effervescent personality. She also has the resume, two-term and popular governor, and she was United Nations ambassador with foreign policy creds. I see her as a potential vice presidential nominee, and I think that's about as far as it goes. I don't see her yet breaking through in Iowa or New Hampshire, and for that matter, polls are kind of mixed in her home state of South Carolina, and I think that's probably enough said. The important thing for her is she's got to make sure she doesn't hurt herself in all of this, so that she could be still fresh as a possible vice presidential nominee or candidate.
Yeah. Well, the only thing that I'll say is in the old days, the color scarlet used to represent something, but South Carolina gave a whole new meaning to the color scarlet. And I just don't see Nikki Haley prospering in a state that is that red. So that's about as far as I would go. I would agree potentially on the VP side, though.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of the VP side, you have Mike Pence. And one of the principal characteristics that Mike Pence has going for him is that if I'm a Hollywood producer and I'm sitting down with a director and I'm saying, give me somebody who looks the way an American president should look. How about that fellow from Indiana, Mike Pence? He looks like a president of the United States. He has the demeanor for it. He's very calm. He's very MAGA voters hate him for all those reasons. In fact, they wanted to hang him Um, whether folks see him as heroic or see him as a goat, fact of the matter is, it's hard to see a lane for Mike Pence. Possibly a good showing in Iowa, but because he's a next door neighbor and because he is also strong among evangelical voters. However, his instance, he has to win Iowa. No second place, no third place, no also ran, no good showing, no let's wait, a couple of days to New Hampshire. He has to win it. And right now, he's still pulling single.
Yeah. What I know Mike Pence for is he exactly what you say. He fits the suit, right? He's from Central Casting, but I don't know what Mike Pence really represents. I understand he was there in the thick of things in January 6th. I think too much of his story is associated with his, rightfully so, with his vice presidency. But beyond that, what does that mean in 2023 going into 2024? And what does he stand for? And what's his vision? I can't communicate it because I don't think I've really heard it from him.
Well, you're not going to hear it from him because he alienates the MAGA voter and was a member of the Trump administration, a leading member to the non-MAGA voter who wants a fresh start. You have Governor Burgum from North Dakota, not necessarily a neighbor, South Dakota on Iowa, but a fellow Midwesterner. The major reason why Burgum even qualifies for this debate is that he met the financial threshold. And he met the financial threshold by anyone who gave $1 got a $20 gift certificate. And so that's like winning the lottery all day, every day. I mean, I can give $1 on Tuesday, I could give $1 on Thursday, I could give $1 on Monday, end up with $60. That's a hell of an investment. So he bought himself way into the debate. He is polling 2 and 3, which is better than 1 and 0. But you have to have a bunch of candidates between now and the start of the primaries fall by the wayside. And talk about not having developed a persona. He hasn't yet. He is, I don't know if he's a billionaire. I know he's extremely wealthy as an entrepreneur. But we'll have to see. That is one that's I have not seen very much on or about him. We have former Governor Asa Hutchinson, is really not a major player. He also is working on an anti-Trump lane, and he could be crowded out by Chris Christie. But this is a man of substance. He's been a congressman, a senator, been a member of the administration. He is and someone who Democrats actually can do business with. Whether or not that gets him anywhere, I don't know, but does deserve mentioning.
Yeah, I think we covered the basics of the playing field.
We'll be back then on Thursday and take a look at what happened.
Yeah, I look forward to that. Yep.